The private investigator slid a manila folder across my kitchen table and said 4 words I will never forget. "Sir, you just became the sole owner of everything." Inside that folder was a marriage license dated June 1999, my cousin's signature, a woman's name I had never heard before, and 25 years of lies that had been running quietly underneath everything I thought I knew. My name is Gerald Harlan. I'm 67 years old, retired civil engineer, Asheville, North Carolina. And this is the story of how the man I called family my entire life nearly took everything I had built, and how I took it all back. Neil Harlan and I grew up in the same house. His mother and my father were siblings. We shared a bedroom until we were teenagers, fought over the bathroom every morning, ate at the same table every night. I was best man at his first wedding. When my wife Linda passed 5 years ago after 31 years of marriage, Neil was the one who showed up at my door the next morning. He sat on my porch with me every Sunday for 3 months straight, did not try to fix anything, did not say much of anything, just showed up. That kind of thing you do not forget. That kind of loyalty you do not question. Linda was the one who always said to trust your gut. She was the more instinctive one between us. I was the engineer, the numbers man. She was the one who read people. After she passed, I thought I was managing fine on my own. I had the work. I had Kevin. I had the partnership with Neil. I thought I had a handle on things. I did not. When Neil proposed we go into business together about 12 years ago, I said yes without hesitating. He had a few small commercial properties. I had some savings and a solid network from 4 decades in construction. We set up Harlan Property Group, clean 50-50, shared operating account, shared line of credit, handshake rule that any draw over $25,000 required both signatures. Simple. Straightforward. The kind of agreement you make with someone you have trusted your whole life. For the first several years, everything ran exactly as it should. We bought 2 commercial properties in Asheville, took on a residential development in Weaverville, turned a reasonable profit. Neil handled most of the day-to-day since I was still doing consulting work. I reviewed the financials every quarter. Nothing unusual. Then the quarterly review in September 2023 showed me something I could not explain. I'm not the kind of man who panics over numbers. 40 years as a structural engineer teaches you to stay calm when something looks wrong. Sit with it. Figure out what you're actually looking at. So I sat with it. Over the previous 18 months, $183,000 had left our operating account, not in large single withdrawals that would have triggered my attention immediately. In smaller amounts between $18,000 and $24,000 each time, always under $25,000, always just below the threshold that required my co-signature. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. I brought it up at our next lunch. Neil did not miss a beat. Henderson County project. Carrying costs, soil work, a couple contractor overruns. I've got it all documented. He was relaxed about it, easy. The way a man is relaxed when he has told a version of the same story enough times that it feels natural. I asked him to send me the documentation. He said he would have it to me by Friday. Friday came, nothing. I asked again 3 weeks later. Traveling, he said. Accountant has the files, I'll get them to you. Another Friday passed, then another. I started paying attention to other things. Neil had always been a creature of habit Monday through Friday, predictable hours, home by 6. Now he was gone most weekends. Property inspections in the western counties, he said. He had started carrying a second phone, a personal one he kept face down on every surface whenever I was around. One Saturday I called his regular number. It rang through to voicemail. He called back 4 hours later and said he had been out of range. I did not say anything. I just kept watching. Linda used to say that when something feels wrong, it usually is. Not paranoia, perception. I had dismissed that idea for most of my life because I preferred data to instinct. But after 4 months of missing documentation and unanswered questions and a second phone that was never face up, even I had to admit that the data was telling me something. On a Tuesday morning in February 2024, I opened the phone book and looked up private investigators. Roy Calloway's office was on the 2nd floor above a title company downtown. Plain frosted glass door, metal desk, 2 chairs. The man himself was mid-50s, quiet build, ex-insurance fraud investigator. He stood up when I walked in, shook my hand and said, "Tell me what brought you in today." So I did, all of it. The $93,000 and the pattern of withdrawals. The weekends Neil was suddenly unavailable, the second phone. 12 years of business together and 60 years of family before that. Roy listened without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set his pen down and asked me one question. Are you prepared for it to be worse than you're imagining right now? I have sat across from clients and told them their building has a compromised foundation. I know what it costs to hear that, and I know what it costs to avoid it. I need to know, I said. Whatever it is, Roy's retainer was $3,500. He told me he would be in touch in about 2 weeks. He called in 11 days. When Roy called, he did not say much over the phone. Just come in today if you can, and bring your son if he is available. Something in his voice made me not ask questions. I called Kevin at his office in Charlotte. He heard whatever was in my voice and said he would be on the road within the hour. My son has always been good at reading a situation without needing it spelled out. He got that from his mother. I got to Roy's office first. He had 2 folders on his desk, both of them thick. He did not make small talk. Neil has been making weekend trips to Hendersonville consistently for at least 4 years, probably longer, but 4 years is what I can document with certainty. I followed him 3 consecutive weekends, same destination every time, a house on Ridgecrest Road. He slid a photograph across the desk. Neil walking up the front steps of a large brick house. Another photo, Neil on the front porch with a woman, blonde, late 50s, the 2 of them standing close the way people stand when they are completely comfortable with each other. A third photo, Neil and the same woman in the driveway, unloading groceries from the back of his car like it was the most ordinary Saturday afternoon in the world. Her name is Carol Harlan, Roy said. I heard the last name and something went cold in my chest. She has been using it since 1999, Roy said. He opened the folder to a document and slid it across the desk. A marriage license. Henderson County, North Carolina, June 14, 1999. Neil Arthur Harlan, Carol Ann Sheldon. Kevin came through the door right at that moment. He took one look at my face and sat down without saying a word. Neil married Carol legally in 1999, Roy continued. His divorce from his first wife, Ann, was finalized in 1997. That marriage was legal. His marriage to Brenda 22 years ago was not. Under North Carolina law, Neil has been a bigamist for over 2 decades. I stared at Neil's signature on that document. The same handwriting I had seen on 12 years of business contracts, partnership agreements, property deeds, documents I had signed my name next to without a second thought because he was Neil and we were family. Kevin put his hand on my arm. I did not say anything. There was nothing to say yet. There is more, Roy said. He opened the second folder. He had pulled property records across 4 counties. The house on Ridgecrest Road was purchased in June 1999, the same month as the marriage license, for $310,000. Current assessed value, $890,000. 3 major renovation phases over the years, 2007, 2013, and 2021. Roy laid the renovation invoices on the desk alongside printed bank statements from our Harlan Property Group operating account. The numbers lined up exactly. The 2007 kitchen and master suite renovation came to $47,000, Roy said. It was funded by 11 separate withdrawals from your shared account, each between $3,500 and $800 spread across 9 months, each one under the radar. The 2013 garage and back porch addition ran $38,000. Same method. The 2021 roof and HVAC replacement, another $29,000. Kevin was running the numbers on his phone. $14,000 just in renovations, plus the $130 you already found. That is pushing $300,000. The forensic picture is still incomplete, Roy said. What I can confirm from the partnership records is $193,000. A full audit would likely find more. Then he placed a third stack of documents on the table, loan papers. 3 commercial loans taken out in the name of Harlan Property Group between 2015 and 2019. Total borrowed, $340,000. My name listed as co-signer on all 3 of them. I had never signed any of those documents. I picked up the top page and looked at the signature on the co-signer line. It looked close to mine. Not exact, but close enough that no one at a bank counter would have stopped to question it. Close enough that it had gone through 3 separate times over 4 years. Those are forgeries, Kevin said. His voice was flat and steady. He had gone into a different mode, the focused analytical mode I recognized from when he was a teenager working through a problem that mattered. Yes, Roy said. Bank fraud and wire fraud are federal matters. That changes the scope of what Neil is looking at considerably. I sat there looking at the loan documents and the bank statements and the photographs of Neil unloading groceries at a house that had been renovated with our money. I thought about every time Neil had mentioned the Henderson County project. Every Friday he had promised to send documentation. Every weekend he had been out west doing inspections. I thought about Linda sitting across from me at this same kitchen table years ago, telling me that her instincts about a person were rarely wrong. I had always smiled at that. The engineer in me wanted data, not instinct. She had been right. The data had just taken a long time to surface. I looked at Roy. What do we do now? Monday morning, he said. We call a lawyer. But Gerald, one thing before that, you do not call Neil tonight. You do not say a word to him. Not yet. I understood exactly what he meant. Helen Marsh's office was on the third floor of a building on College Street, clean and organized in the way that serious people keep their workspaces. She was around 50, calm, the kind of attorney who is seen enough that nothing rattles her. She listened to everything I had without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair and said, "Gerald, you have enough to take him apart in court. But if you pick up the phone and call him tonight, he lawyers up, moves assets, warns Carol, and this case drags on for 3 years minimum. Right now you have one thing working entirely in your favor. He has no idea you know anything. Do not give that up." She laid out the plan in 3 steps. Step 1 was to preserve everything. Roy's documentation, the bank statements showing the pattern of withdrawals, the renovation invoices matched against our operating account, the forged loan signatures. All of it certified, organized, chain of custody established. Nothing confrontational yet. Nothing that would tip Neil off. Step 2 was a full forensic audit. Kevin had a contact, a CPA who specialized in partnership fraud cases. We brought him in quietly. His job was to go through every transaction in the Harlan Property Group accounts over the full 12 years of our partnership and build a complete picture, not just what Roy had found, but everything. Step 3 was what Helen called the meeting. We would invite Neil to a routine partnership review, the kind we had done twice a year for over a decade. Agenda: Q4 financials, 2 property listings we were evaluating, updated authorization paperwork, nothing that would raise any concern. Neil had sat across from me at that table dozens of times. This would look exactly like every other time. Inside the stack of routine documents, there would be one additional form, an internal audit disclosure, standard-looking language, the kind of thing that could easily get lost in a pile of papers. It required each partner to certify in writing that all personal use of partnership funds had been properly documented and disclosed. If Neil signed it, he would be certifying in his own handwriting that everything was above board. That signature, placed alongside everything Roy and the forensic accountant had already documented, would be the final piece Helen needed to anchor the civil fraud claims. She was clear about the line we were not crossing. "We are not trapping him into committing a crime," she said. "We are giving him an opportunity to tell the truth. If he signs that form, honestly, he would have to disclose everything. What he chooses to do with that opportunity is his decision entirely." I drove home that evening and did something I had not done in 5 years. I sat on the back porch after dark in the chair where Linda used to sit with her coffee on summer evenings, and I just stayed there for a while. I thought about the Sunday mornings Neil had sat with me on that same porch after Linda died, saying nothing, just being there. I had believed without question that it came from love, from family. That is the thing about a well-constructed lie. It does not look like a lie. It looks exactly like everything you ever wanted it to be. I thought about the 12 years of partnership meetings and property walks and handshake agreements. I thought about every time Neil had said "we" when talking about the business. Every time he had said family like it meant something. And somewhere 30 miles away in Hendersonville, in a brick house renovated with our money, Carol Harlan had been living a completely parallel life with the same man. I went inside, went to bed, and slept better than I expected to. Sometimes when you finally know the truth, even a hard truth, the body just settles. The next 6 weeks, I acted like nothing had changed. Neil and I had lunch twice. We talked about the Henderson County project, the 2 listings Helen had put on the meeting agenda, a residential development I was genuinely interested in pursuing. I asked questions, took notes, nodded at the right moments. Neil was relaxed and easy the whole time, the same way he had always been. That was the part that stayed with me. Not anger, not guilt, not even a flicker of unease. Just Neil comfortable in his own skin, talking about square footage and cap rates like a man with nothing to hide. The forensic audit came back in week 4. The CPA's final number was $247,000 in misappropriated partnership funds over 11 years. More than Roy had initially found, which is what Helen had expected. Systematic withdrawals, misclassified business expenses, renovation costs run through our accounts and labeled as project carrying costs. Neil had been careful. Not careful enough, but careful. I called Neil on a Wednesday, kept it completely casual. Suggested we do our Q4 review that Friday, said I had 2 listings I wanted to walk through and some updated authorization paperwork Helen had put together. He said it sounded good. Said the Henderson project was finally moving and the timing was perfect. He sounded like a man who had done nothing wrong. Friday morning, I set the folders on the kitchen table in the right order. Kevin was in the next room. Roy was parked on the street outside. Helen was a phone call away. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. The recorder was running before Neil knocked on the door. Neil arrived at 11:30 exactly. He brought coffee from the place on Lexington Avenue, the dark roast I liked. He set it on the table like he had done 100 times before, shrugged off his jacket, sat down, completely at ease. We went through the routine materials first. Q4 numbers, the 2 property listings, standard business. Neil was engaged and sharp, pointing out a zoning issue on one of the listings I had not caught, asking good questions about the cap rate on the other. For about 40 minutes, it felt exactly like every other partnership meeting we had ever had. Then I slid the disclosure form across the table. New compliance document Helen put together. Auditor wants each partner to certify the personal use policy. Just confirms we have both been by the book. Neil picked it up. Read it. His eyes moved down the page at a normal pace. He reached for his pen. Neil. He looked up. Before you sign that, I want to give you a chance to tell me something. A pause. Something moved across his face, quick, like a shadow crossing a wall. Then it was gone, and he was looking at me with the same easy expression he had worn all morning. Tell you what, I slid the marriage license across the table. The color left his face the way water drains out of a sink, fast and complete. He stared at the document without picking it up. His pen was still in his hand. Where did you get that? Henderson County Courthouse. It is a public record. Anyone can pull it. I kept my voice even. Is Carol Harlan your wife? He did not answer right away. He set the pen down. He looked at the marriage license, then at me, then back at the document. Neil, yes or no? It is not what it looks like. That is a yes or a no question. Another pause, longer this time, then quietly. Yes, he said it. The way a man says something he has been carrying for so long that putting it down even like this, even here, comes with something that almost resembles relief. Since 1999, I said before Brenda, before the partnership. Yes. So for the entire 12 years, we have been in business together. You have been a bigamist. He leaned forward. Gerald, listen to me. It got out of hand. When Carol and I got married, things with Brenda were already complicated. Her family had money tied up in some of my early deals. If I had filed for divorce from Carol, it would have unraveled everything I was going to fix it. I just needed more time, I said. You had 25 years. I know how this sounds. What about the money, Neil? The $18,300. His jaw tightened. I was going to pay it back. The Henderson project was supposed to generate enough by end of last year to cover it and then some. It just took longer than I projected. Walk me through the renovations on the Ridgecrest Roadhouse. He went still. The 2007 kitchen remodel for $47,000 run through our operating account in 11 separate withdrawals, all under $25,000. The $2,013 garage addition. The 2021 roof and HVAC. I have the invoices, Neil. I have the bank statements. I have a forensic accountant's report showing $247,000 moved from our partnership accounts into that house over 11 years. He looked at me for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had dropped. You hired someone. I hired someone. He sat back in his chair. The easy confidence from the morning was gone. He looked like a man doing very fast calculations in his head and not liking any of the answers he was getting. The loan documents, I said. The 3 commercial loans taken out in the name of Harlan Property Group between 2015 and 2019, $340,000 total. My name on the co-signer line on all 3 of them. He did not say anything. I never signed those documents, Neil. Still nothing. That is forgery. Bank fraud. Wire fraud. Those are federal charges. He put his hands flat on the table. Gerald, we can fix this. We keep this between us. I restructure the buyout, sign over my share of the Henderson property, cover the $247,000 from my personal accounts. We settle it privately and nobody has to know anything. Brenda knows. Brenda and I have an arrangement. Does she know about Carol? The pause told me everything. Carol has always known about you, I said. It was not really a question. The forensic accountant had found deposits from some of the transferred funds going directly into a joint personal account Carol held with Neil. She had not been kept in the dark. She had been a participant. It is complicated, Neil said. Neil, I kept my voice level. Helen files civil claims Monday morning. The DA receives the forgery documentation today. There is nothing left to negotiate. He reached across the table toward my arm. Think about what this does to the family. My mother is 84 years old, your aunt. You want to do this to her? I thought about Dorothy. I thought about Linda on the porch telling me to trust what I was feeling. I thought about 60 years of Sunday dinners and shared history and a bedroom we had split down the middle with a piece of tape when we were 10 years old. You should have thought about her in 1999, I said. I stood up, walked to the front door and opened it. I need you to leave, Neil. He sat there for another moment. Then he picked up his jacket and walked out without another word. I closed the door behind him and stood in the hallway for a while, listening to his truck back out of the driveway. Then I called Helen and told her we were ready. Neil was arrested on bigamy charges the following Wednesday. The DA added wire fraud and bank fraud counts based on the forged loan signatures. I did not go to watch. I did not need to. The civil case ran on a parallel track. Helen filed claims for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of partnership funds, and unjust enrichment. The forensic accountant's report became the backbone of the civil filing. $204 in confirmed misappropriation, documented transaction by transaction, over 11 years. Every withdrawal matched to a date, an amount, a destination. Carol hired her own attorney. Her position was that she had not known the renovation funds were misappropriated, that she had believed Neil when he told her the money came from legitimate business income. The court did not find that convincing. Several of the transferred amounts had been deposited directly into a joint personal account she held with Neil. She had signed for them. The paper trail was clear. Neil's criminal defense argued that he had always intended to repay the partnership funds, that the situation had grown complicated over time, that both households had been well provided for and no one had suffered financially. The prosecutor handled that argument efficiently. She asked Neil on the stand whether he had used partnership funds to renovate a property he owned jointly with another woman without disclosing it to his business partner. He said yes. She asked whether he had signed Gerald Harlan's name to 3 commercial loan documents without Gerald Harlan's knowledge or consent. After a long pause, he said yes. Neil pleaded guilty before the case went to the jury. 4 years in federal prison. Restitution ordered. Partnership assets subject to forfeiture and civil judgment. The civil judgment came 3 months after the criminal sentencing. Helen called me on a Tuesday afternoon and told me to sit down $1.4 million. My full 50% of Harlan Property Group, now mine outright with Neil's share liquidated in my favor. Recovery of the $247,000 in misappropriated funds plus damages. A constructive trust claim on the Ridgecrest Road property settled for $380,000 after Carol negotiated a partial equity deal rather than fight the full claim at trial. 3 commercial properties, Neil's share converted. Investment accounts, everything documented, everything accounted for. Helen set the final judgment papers on my kitchen table, the same table where Roy had first slid that manila folder toward me 9 months earlier. She said, "Gerald, you should know this outcome is not typical. You had clean documentation, a solid forensic trail, and you did not tip him off before we were ready. All 3 of those things mattered." I told her the $3,500 Roy charged for his retainer was the best money I had spent in years. She said she would pass that along. Neil is serving his sentence at a minimum security facility in Butner. He has written twice. I have not opened the letters, not out of anger. Exactly. I just do not have anything left to say to him, and I do not think reading what he has written would change that. Carol moved to Tennessee. Her divorce from Neil was finalized about 8 months after his sentencing. Brenda filed for divorce the same week the arrest was reported in the paper. Neil went into federal prison with 2 marriages. Both of them ended before he reported to his facility. My Aunt Dorothy called me 2 weeks after the arrest. She is 84 years old and sharper than most people half her age. I had been dreading that call. Instead, she said, "Gerald, I'm not angry with you. He made his choices and you made yours. Your father would have done the same thing. We still talk every Sunday. Kevin helped me restructure everything. Harlan Property Group is a sole proprietorship now, Gerald Harlan Properties. Smaller operation, simpler structure, 2 solid commercial properties, and 1 residential development in Weaverville. I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing through. I know every transaction, every account, every dollar. Nobody else has signing authority. That is how it should have been from the start. I donated a portion of the settlement to a legal aid organization that helps people navigate financial fraud cases when they cannot afford the kind of representation I was fortunate enough to have. It felt like the right use for some of that money. The first weekend after the judgment came through, I drove up into the mountains with a new fly rod and spent 2 days standing in cold water thinking about almost nothing. It was the first time in about a year that I was not running calculations in the back of my mind. Neil cost me money. He cost me years of misplaced trust. He cost me the version of our family I had believed was real for 60 years. But there is something he could not take. The part of me that knows how to read a problem clearly, stay calm, gather facts without showing his hand, and act when the time is right. That is the part that saved me. If you are watching this and something in your business or your partnership or your finances does not add up the way it should, trust that feeling. Do not confront first. Document first. Get the right people in your corner before you show anyone what you know. And do not let anyone tell you that protecting yourself is a betrayal. The betrayal already happened. You're just responding to it. My name is Gerald Harlan. That is my story.